evening once again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Poetry Relay. My name is Robert Casely, and I'm the chair of the Department of Theater at the University of Idaho, but I'm also a proud member of the Moscow Arts Commission, and it's the MAC that is hosting this event tonight. We wish we could see all of your wonderful faces in person at City Hall, but we didn't want to let the pandemic prevent us from celebrating the written and spoken word. So we sure do appreciate you joining us here in the virtual space tonight. Now, before we begin, we would like to acknowledge that here in Moscow, Idaho, we are standing on the traditional lands of the Nez Perce, and we would like to thank them for their careful stewardship of this sacred land since time immemorial. And we would also ask that wherever you may be zooming in from tonight, you just take a moment to reflect on whose ancestral lands you may be currently standing. Just so you know, the wonderful jazz that you're hearing tonight during the event is provided courtesy of the Palouse Jazz Project. And if you would like to purchase a CD of this wonderful music, we're going to put an email into the chat, and you can email the Lionel Hampton School of Music to purchase a copy. And if you mention when you buy the copy of the CD, the April Poetry Relay, you can purchase the CD for just $5. And that's a 50% discount off the regular price. And your money goes to a very worthy cause, supporting musical artists going into the local school district classrooms. So it's terrific, and it's wonderful music you'll hear punctuating tonight's poems. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce Megan Cherry, Arts Program Manager from the City of Moscow, to tell you a little more about what you're about to see. Megan?
Good evening and welcome. My name is Megan Cherry, and I'm the Arts Program Manager here at the City of Moscow. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to this evening's April Poetry Relay. This event is part of the Moscow Poet Laureate program, which aims to elevate the role that poetry plays in the community. One of the greatest parts of this event is that it highlights the relationship between creative people in our beautiful city. We're fortunate to have 4 poets from Moscow's literary community who will read their work tonight. Along with the featured poets, we're also playing the music of Palouse Jazz Project. And as Rob mentioned, there's a link to more information and access to their music in the chat. I wanted to mention that I'm grateful to the huge group of people that made this evening possible. I'd like to thank the Moscow Arts Commission for sharing their vision for programming offered by the City of Moscow Arts Department. Susan Hodgin is the current Moscow Poet Laureate, and she prompted the beginnings of the Poetry Relay in 2019 by advocating for an event that allows attendees to truly focus on the beauty of language. We're grateful to her for many contributions. A huge thank you to Rob Casely, who is the chair of the University of Idaho Department of Theater and a member of the Arts Commission. He and Cesar Reyes have made tonight possible with a creative technical vision for this presentation. Programming offered by the City of Moscow Arts Department is made possible also by the support of the Idaho Commission on the Arts and the National Endowment for the Arts. We're grateful for their belief in our vision. Finally, it's my pleasure to introduce poet and University of Idaho Department of English professor Mike McGriff, who will be tonight's host. Michael, thank you for being with us. And with that, the virtual stage is yours.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Megan. And thanks to my fellow Moscow area poets, especially our poet laureate, Susan Hodgin, for involving me in tonight's reading. My name is Mike McGriff. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a local writer and teacher, and I'm absolutely pleased to be here. The poems you'll hear from us tonight are interconnected. The last line of my poem is echoed in the first line of Susan's, and so forth. This event shows how poetry speaks to all of us, individually and as a community. We certainly have a lot of talent in the area, from our young writers in our Writers in the Schools program, which is hosted through UI's English department, to local writers groups, to our Poets Laureate, current and former. I'm grateful to the Arts Commission for bringing us all together to celebrate an artwork that's truly as unique as those who make it. My poem tonight, though written in Moscow, is about the Alsea River, which runs from Oregon's Coast Range and empties out into Oregon's Central Coast. This is a poem that looks forward to summer. Sleeping beside the Alsea. In 2 more breaths, the river will change direction with the tide. The elk sharpen their craft of disregarding us. On the far shore, they are both memory and experience. The light makes me think of a clean ashtray on a windowsill. The wind undresses across the water. It has never lied about what it doesn't know. It readies its love letter. I see nothing. I see everything. I see the long envelope. Thank you.
Good evening. As our co-host, Michael McGriff, has introduced me, yes, I'm Susan Hodgin, your city's Poet Laureate, co-founder of today's event, April Poetry Relay. Tonight, we honor poetry and poets, its place, their place, in our culture and in the arts. It is, after all, National Poetry Month, founded in 1996 by the National Academy of Poetry. Just a short bio about April Poetry Relay. As Megan Cherry said previously, it began in 2019, featuring gifted local poets, such as Idaho's first writer-in-residence, Ron McFarland, and then his successor, poet Robert Wrigley. It also featured 3 of Bob's former MFA students whose work I have long admired, Georgia Tiffany, Terry Gaffney, and Daniel Berkner. I kicked off the run with an intro from Megan Cherry, our new then city's art manager, read 5 poems, introduced the next poet, who was Ron, who in turn did the same, closing with Bob's reading of chorus. The relay was a success. How do we know? Our numbers, for one, the biggest crowd recorded then for the city's evening art programs. And more importantly for me, it was the first occasion for many friends to have attended formally a poetry reading. And they stood back and said, oh my God, this was fun. And I loved it. And I can't wait for the next one. Unfortunately, that went on standby with the pandemic. It was scheduled for April 1st, which was to be the brainstorm again of Ron McFarland. We were going to have more fun and do humorous poetry. So tonight, here this evening, is a comeback from many of those from that particular first one in the audience and on stage with me. The first of my guests is Edward Flathers, the first poet that follows me. He's a former student and likely my best reader in my poetry group. We call ourselves the Fort Russell Writers. Ed and I met when he was an 8th grader in my accelerated English class, and with 3 of his best friends, they became known as the Big Four, editors of our then award-winning junior high literary and art magazine, Ursa Major. And as one of my former students once said to her co-advisors, we can't be Ursa Minor, Miss T, Miss H. There's nothing minor about us. And the high school, known as the Bears, then without an arts magazine, could never be Ursa Major. These writers claimed their title. Ron McFarland, the second poet in tonight's relay, became my mentor when I took a summer seminar under the direction of the phenomenal U of I teacher of teachers, Eleanor Michael. Through this seminar, 1 week was devoted to creative writing, particularly poetry. McFarland inspired me to write, and I found myself writing 2 or 3 poems into the wee hours. Then Ron founded the U of I Distinguished Visiting Writers, and he opened it up to community members like me, giving me, a classroom teacher, a seat in an evening class with poets such as Gary Soto, Sharon Olds, Stephen Dunn, and Jory Graham. More reading, more writing, more poetry. His latest collection of fishing poems and prose is called Professor McFarland in Real Time. Please get your copy. Dwayne Hodgin, the third featured poet, is my husband of almost 47 years and my BFF, my first reader always, and as I became one of his for his poetry and short stories. When I first told Dwayne that I wanted to write poetry, he surprised me with a copy of Perrin's Sound and Sense, an Introduction to Poetry. No more winging it, and then he sent me off to a weekend workshop by myself to McCall, where I attended a poetry writing session taught by Bob Wrigley. Because of these 3 poets, iron sharpens iron. My teaching changed, my students' writing changed, and my poetry changed. These men, Edward Flathers, Ron McFarland, Dwayne Hodgin, my poets, my Moscow family, are my honored guest and team for this final relay run with me as Poet Laureate. Each, just as you saw Michael McGriff do with my own, each will take the last line of each read poem in succession and incorporate the last line as the first line of their poem, ending with the 4th reader, Dwayne, a different relay spin for 2021, created by Megan Cherry and her assistant, Brittany Kristen, with great appreciation. So here we go. My poem is one of many from my coronavirus poem files from 2020. It is a companion poem showing an event that happened to a dear friend when her vision fails. The closing part of a letter marks its title. Sincerely, I saw the long envelope she had addressed in cursive, envisioning her clutched pen held left-handed, her held magnifying glass in her right, knowing how cautious she is to cross the T, all legible and black in her signature Sharpie. Quarantined, she wrote her letter to the regional paper, thanking editors for a lifetime of reader service to her dead husband, regretfully suspending her subscription, explaining she could not see anymore, begged me to save headlines from my daily papers, to read aloud to her, made me promise as she handed me the stamped envelope. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ed Flathers, and I'm here to be the second reader in the relay this evening. I just want to mention that the sort of the systematic design of the poetry that we're reading tonight, where one poem connects directly to the next, was designed as a surrealist exercise in Europe many, many years ago. And so in a nod to that, the poem that I'm going to read for you tonight includes at least a nod to the surrealists. This is called Late Spring Afterward. As she handed me the stamped envelope, the courier paused. So we shared outlooks on weather, seasons, enthusiastic chatter of strangers too long and quiet, laughing before she continued with her appointed rounds, and I remained warming on the stone-paved walk, eyeing early blooms. Rather than pass, the moment continued, as though a sunny afternoon in spring could carry on that way, as if newness might persist, its ephemera imbued upon a stone that I could carry in my pocket, not to worry, but inflect the present tense upon mundanities, make first the seconds in perpetua. Overflowing with this heady promise, I tucked the letter into my jacket, followed the pathway through budding lilacs around to the patio and back. There you were, singing softly to yourself. Your hair was longer now, and you had tied it back, and you set down a pitcher of iced tea, and we sat at the table and played dominoes with dandelions popping yellow in grass, chores for later, color for now. A breeze carried scent of mown grass, acrid nose and drone of a two-stroke some way down, hammer and saw of carpenter, dogs at play, mirthful at the passing of these wearing months of cold confinement, fresh again to smells of earth and longer days. And finally that night, as I hung up my jacket, I found that letter, sliced it open to find a single leaf sent from our future, not exactly folded, not exactly paper, a page from the book of memory, worn by years, kept keen through recall, reliving this day, improved by years of fondness, a bit warmer, the light shifting through golden hues, edges sharpened, also soft in places. But why should we send ourselves a record of this day to ourselves on this same day? And I wonder if a thing from the future will always be new if it comes from a time not yet arrived. We frame the page and hang it on the wall, and when we look at it, that day may be new, and we may be there, and perhaps an ordinary day can be perfect.
Hey, I imagine a lot of you are pretty disappointed not to see me wear that particular chapeau this evening. It proves pretty much conclusively that a lampshade looks better on some guys than it does on a lamp. I want to thank you all for sitting in on this, and thank Ed Flathers for giving me the first line of a poem. In 60 or so years of trying to write poetry, I have very rarely stumbled into a love poem, but I'm afraid this may be a case in point. ordinary love. An ordinary day can be perfect, dawn till dusk, till twilight, in search of one single extraordinary night, celebrated with the great horned owl, calling hoo 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 from our blue spruce, that supernatural lovebird. Who'd have thought? What, you assumed a snow-white turtle dove, nightingale, trumpeter swan, skylark, at least a chickadee? Let this perfectly lovely night attune itself to the croon of our predatory owl, prowling the darkness in search of rabbits, perhaps a small cat, a mouse, an amatory offer to its lady love, who echoes his hoo 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 with soft whispers from a grand fir down the block. Meanwhile, we perfectly ordinary lovers spent the night locked in each other's dreams.
Hi, I'm Dwayne Hodgin, the fourth of the relay poets tonight. When I read the last line of the poem, and that's all we got was just the last line of the poem in front of me, I knew immediately it was a love song, spent the night locked in each other's dreams. But I took a closer look at it and I saw that it was a 9-syllable line. So I decided to add one syllable to it in the title. So I titled it We, and then the rest of the line. And the poem continues from there, and is each line is 10 syllables. It's a decasyllabic poem. So I'll begin. We spent the night locked in each other's dreams when we were young, and dreams were clothed in hope. We'd wake with the sun, pull the blinds open, gaze across the Camas Sea, waves of gray hills awash in vermilion caps of wheat, sweeping to Clearwater Mountains beyond. The heat in the dreams of our bodies warmed our bed then. Now, this half century past, we warm each other with our bodies before we peer out our window to snow, piling almost to the sill this crisp March. Annie, the blind Newfoundland at our feet, dreams too, lying on her side, her nose wiggling, back legs pawing the earth in some lost field. A wolf? A greyhound? Or some other beast she would love to be in some other life. But this is the life lived. She can't escape the trap of who she is, locked in never-ending darkness as we lead her around the house into the yard. Turn, turn, good girl. She leans into our fence, scratching her jowls along its panels as we, in wonder, watch her make her way to remembered paths she used to run, etched into the circle of the fence that keeps her pinned in safely, where she can walk almost as she pleases before she plops to her unfettered dreams.